At Thanksgiving, my wife's uncle asked why she married me. She smirked and said, because I couldn't do better at the time. Everyone laughed. I just finished eating. A week later, she was begging me to come back. The turkey was dry, the mashed potatoes were gluey, and the air was thick with the kind of forced cheer that only families who secretly hate each other can produce. It was Thanksgiving held at the home of my wife's parents, an annual tradition I endured like a root canal. I was seated across from my wife Emily and next to her insufferable Uncle Ron, a man who'd made his money in some vague financial field and thought it gave him the right to be a world-class jerk. We were halfway through the meal, stuck in that dead zone between the main course and the pumpkin pie. Uncle Ron, who'd had about 3 too many glasses of red wine, decided to liven things up by making me his personal entertainment for the evening. He leaned back in his chair, gesturing at me with his fork. "Emily, I've been meaning to ask you," he said, his voice loud enough to silence the rest of the table. "I get that he's a nice guy and all, but why him? You could have had anyone. Why did you marry this guy?" The question hung in the air, dripping with condescension. He wasn't just asking a question. He was passing a judgment. The entire family turned to look at us, their faces a mixture of morbid curiosity and smug satisfaction. They all thought the same thing. He was just the only one drunk enough to say it out loud. I looked at Emily, my wife of 3 years. I expected her to shut him down, to defend me, to defend us. Instead, a slow, calculated smirk spread across her face. She looked at her uncle, then glanced at me with a look of theatrical pity. "Because I couldn't do better at the time," she said, her voice light and airy. The table exploded in laughter. Not just a few chuckles, but a full-throated, cathartic roar. Her father clapped his brother on the back. Her sister Megan nearly spit out her wine. It was the funniest joke they had ever heard. The punchline, of course, was me. My entire existence, my worth as a husband and a man, reduced to a punchline in their sad little family drama. I didn't say a word. I didn't get angry. I didn't stand up and flip the table. I just picked up my fork, took another bite of the dry turkey, chewed it slowly, and swallowed. I finished what was on my plate. Then I calmly placed my knife and fork together, wiped my mouth with my napkin, and looked at Emily. She was still glowing from her moment, basking in the approval of her family. In that moment, something inside me didn't break. It settled. It was the cold, quiet calm of a structure that has finally collapsed under its own rotten weight. For 3 years, I had been working on a project and I had just discovered that the foundation was hopelessly, irredeemably compromised. And in my line of work, you don't patch a bad foundation. You tear the whole building down to the studs and start over. Let me be very clear about who I am. I am not a wimp. I am not a doormat. I am a historical restoration architect. I don't build new flashy things. I take old, beautiful things that have been neglected and abused and I bring them back to life. I understand structures, foundations, and the hidden fatal flaws that can bring down the most impressive facades. My entire life is about patience, precision, and understanding that what you can't see is always more important than what you can. I met Emily 4 years ago. She came from a family that had money but no taste. A dangerous combination. They were all about new builds, cheap materials, and flashy finishes. I came from nothing, but I had built a successful niche firm that was respected for its quality and integrity. They saw me as a curiosity, the blue-collar boy who had somehow stumbled into their world. I wasn't a simp paying her bills. Our marriage was supposed to be a partnership, a restoration project of its own. I thought we were building a life together. I saw her family's condescension as a flaw in their design, not hers. I thought she was different. I was wrong. She wasn't just a product of her toxic environment. She was a load-bearing wall in it. Her comment at that table wasn't just an insult. It was a structural analysis. It revealed that she saw our marriage not as a partnership, but as a placeholder. I wasn't her husband. I was a starter home until the real estate market improved. So, as I sat there listening to their laughter fade, I wasn't feeling hurt. I was drafting a demolition plan. They thought I was the joke. They had no idea I was about to become the wrecking ball. Update 1. The drive home from Thanksgiving was silent. Not an angry silence, just an empty one. Emily was still high on her social victory, scrolling through her phone and occasionally chuckling at whatever her sister was texting her. She thought my silence was me pouting, a temporary mood that would pass. She had no idea it was the calm before the storm. When we got back to our house, a beautiful 1920s craftsman that I had spent a year lovingly restoring, I didn't confront her. I just went into my office and closed the door. The first phase of any demolition is a thorough structural audit. You need to know exactly what you're dealing with before you start swinging a sledgehammer. My primary target was our biggest joint project, our dream home. For the past year, we had been building a new house on a beautiful piece of land I had bought a few years before we were married. It was her passion project and my financial nightmare. She had wanted a modern monstrosity, all glass and steel, the kind of soulless box her family admired. The budget had spiraled out of control, fueled by her constant demands for more expensive materials and last-minute design changes. The entire project was a monument to her entitlement. I had been funding the entire build. The land was in both our names now, a concession I had made in the spirit of partnership. But every single dollar that had gone into the construction, the contractors, the materials, the permits had come from my business account. I spent the next 2 hours going through the financials. I had a complete itemized record of every single transaction. The total so far was just over $800,000. But as I dug deeper, I found the rot. For the past 6 months, there had been a series of overages and discretionary material fees paid to a vendor I didn't recognize. The payments were small at first, then grew larger. They were all approved by Emily. I did a quick search on the vendor. It was a shell company and its registration address was a P.O. box. A P.O. box that was linked to a single name, Megan, Emily's sister. It took me another hour to unravel the scam. Emily and her sister had set up a fake vendor account. Emily would approve inflated or completely fabricated invoices for the house build, and I, trusting my wife, had been paying them. The money was being funneled from our construction fund directly into a secret bank account. I hacked into the account, a skill I've picked up over the years from dealing with shady contractors, and found a complete record of their little scheme. They had skimmed just over $65,000. The account statements also showed what they were spending it on, a failing online boutique that Megan had started a year ago. This was the fatal flaw in her design. This wasn't just disrespect, it was fraud. This was the leverage I needed to bring the whole rotten structure down. The next morning, while Emily was at a spa day with her sister, presumably celebrating their Thanksgiving triumph, I began the demolition. My first call was to the general contractor on the new house, a man named Dave, who I had worked with for years. Dave was an old-school guy who valued honesty and craftsmanship. I told him I had discovered a significant financial discrepancy in the project's billing and that I was putting an immediate and indefinite hold on all construction. I told him to pull his crews off the site and that no further invoices would be paid until a full audit was complete. Dave, who had been complaining about Emily's constant changes for months, was more than happy to comply. My second call was to the bank that held the construction loan. I informed them of the same financial discrepancy and the potential for fraud. The bank, in a predictable fit of risk management, immediately froze the account and launched its own investigation. The primary source of funding for Emily's dream was now locked down tight. Next, I dealt with our personal finances. I went to my bank and opened a series of new accounts. I transferred every penny of my personal and business funds, leaving our joint accounts with a balance of exactly zero. I then called the credit card companies and had Emily removed as an authorized user on all my accounts. With the financial firewall in place, I prepared my final attack. I put together a dossier. It was a clean, professional audit of Emily and Megan's little boutique. It included the evidence of the shell company, the fraudulent invoices, the bank statements from their secret account showing the $65,000 they had stolen, and a business analysis showing that the boutique itself was a financial disaster. Losing thousands of dollars a month. I didn't send it to the police. Not yet. I sent it to a single, carefully chosen target, Uncle Ron. I knew from listening to Emily's conversations that Ron was the primary investor in Megan's boutique. He had put up a $100,000 of his own money, convinced it was the next big thing. I sent the dossier from an anonymous email address with a simple 2-word message. Your investment, the traps were set. The charges were planted. The beautiful facade of Emily's perfect life was about to be blown sky high. And she was still at the spa getting a pedicure, completely oblivious to the fact that her world was about to end. Update 2. The first detonation occurred less than 12 hours after I sent the email to Uncle Ron. I was at home making myself a proper steak dinner when Emily came home. She was in a foul mood. "The strangest thing happened today," she said, throwing her purse on the counter. "My card was declined when I was paying for the spa, and Megan's was too. We had to call Mom to come pay for it. It was so embarrassing." I just looked at her. "That is strange," I said and went back to my steak. She was about to launch into a full-blown complaint when her phone rang. It was her father. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but I could see the color drain from her face. Her expression shifted from annoyance to confusion to pure unadulterated panic. She kept saying, "What are you talking about? I don't understand. What email?" She hung up the phone, her hand shaking. "Uncle Ron just called Dad screaming." She whispered, he said we stole from him. He said the boutique is a sham." She looked at me, her eyes wide with dawning horror. "He knew, Adam. He knew about the invoices." I just took another bite of my steak. "That's a serious accusation," I said. Before she could process that, her phone buzzed again. It was a text from Dave, the contractor. "Emily just confirming that all work on the house has been suspended indefinitely per Adam's instructions. The site is now locked down." She stared at the text, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. "Suspended? What does that mean? Why would you do that?" "There are some financial irregularities that need to be investigated," I said, echoing the words I'd used with the bank. "I can't, in good conscience, continue to fund a project that is so clearly compromised." This was the one-two punch that brought her to her knees. Her secret source of income was exposed, and her dream house, the ultimate symbol of her social triumph, was now a ghost site, a monument to her failure. The week that followed was a glorious cascading collapse of their entire family structure. Uncle Ron, furious at being made a fool of, immediately pulled all his funding from the boutique and threatened to sue his own nieces for fraud. Megan, in a panic, immediately blamed Emily for the whole scheme. The two sisters, who had been thick as thieves, were now at each other's throats. Emily's parents were caught in the middle, trying to run damage control on a situation that was spiraling out of control. Their perfect family image was being shattered in real time. Their friends and neighbors, who had all been watching the construction of the massive new house with a mixture of envy and awe, were now all asking why the work had stopped. The rumor mill was in overdrive. Emily tried everything. First, she tried to deny it all, to lie her way out of it. I countered by sending a copy of the dossier to her father. The undeniable proof of her and Megan's fraud laid out in black and white ended that strategy. Next, she tried to apologize. She gave me the full waterworks display. She was sorry she had made a mistake. She had been under pressure from Megan. She loved me. It was a performance and a bad one at that. "This isn't about an apology, Emily," I told her, my voice completely calm. "This is about a fundamental structural flaw. Our partnership was built on what I thought was a foundation of trust. You have just proven that the foundation is rotten, and I don't build on rotten foundations." With her world crumbling around her and with me offering no help whatsoever, she was left with no money, a half-finished house she couldn't afford, and a family that was now consumed by infighting and lawsuits. She was completely, utterly beaten. Final update. It has been a month since the Thanksgiving dinner. As the title of this post suggests, a week after I set my plan in motion, she was at my door begging. Not for me to come back to her, but for me to come back to the project. "Please, Adam," she pleaded, her face tears streaked and desperate. "You have to finish the house. It's all I have left. We can work this out." I just looked at her. This woman who had so confidently mocked me in front of her family now reduced to a begging, pathetic mess. "The house is not the project, Emily," I had told her. "We were the project and it has failed its final inspection." I offered her a deal, a way out. I would assume full financial and legal responsibility for the house. I would finish it, sell it, and she would get her name off the deed and the loan. In return, she would sign a postnuptial agreement, giving up any and all claims to my business and my other assets, and she would agree to an immediate and uncontested divorce. The $65,000 she and her sister had stolen would be deducted from her share of the final sale. She had no choice but to agree. I'm writing this from the construction site of what used to be her dream home. The crews are back. The work is resuming, but the plans have changed. I've scrapped the cold, modern design she wanted. I'm redesigning it myself, turning it into a beautiful, classic home with integrity and character. A place with a solid foundation. When it's finished, I will sell it. After paying off the loans and deducting the money she stole, she will walk away with a small amount of cash, but not enough to sustain the lifestyle she thought she was entitled to. Her family is in ruins. Uncle Ron is suing Megan and their parents are caught in the legal crossfire. Their reputation in their small, wealthy community is in tatters. They are the family who raised a thief. Emily, I heard, had to move back in with her parents. The beautiful craftsman house that I had restored, the one we had lived in, is now on the market. I'm selling that, too. I'm liquidating all the assets of our failed partnership. My revenge wasn't a single explosive act. It was a careful, methodical demolition. I took the thing she valued most, her dream of a perfect impressive life, and I exposed it for what it was, a cheap facade with a rotten foundation. She thought I was the temporary man she had settled for. She learned in the most expensive way possible that I was the only thing holding her entire world together. Music.